This is really wonderful. We love to be able to promote people's research, and we allocate funds every year. And we wish we had more, but we do what we can, and we try to support research that we think is innovative, that's taking online methodology to the next level, that's important for both theoretical and practical methodological reasons. So we had we do this is the second year that we've had this grant program. Last year's recipients had some really wonderful studies that they had been conducting this year, and this year we have really also some wonderful studies that the purpose of the session is for all the grant recipients of this year to share with us really quickly. It's going to be like 5 minutes for each one, but just really quickly to share some of the research that they'll be doing, and we kind of look forward to hearing more about those research projects as the year goes on. And also just wanted to let you know that we'll be doing this again. We'll be doing this again this year. So there were just so many wonderful applications that we reviewed, and it was really difficult to choose between them because there are just so many good ones. Of course, we had to choose something, so we chose the ones that we thought were really fantastic, and that's what you'll be hearing about today. But throughout this year, I think very shortly we'll be making another announcement for another next round of funding, and I encourage all of you to please apply. If you have students, you should let them know about it, or if you're not planning to apply, like colleagues know. With that being said, we can just start our presentations.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Farnoosh Reshadi, and I'm an assistant professor of marketing at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And this is a project with my co-author, Dr. Elizabeth Gratz, who is at St. Bonaventure. First of all, before I start, I should say that on behalf of my co-author, I should thank the CloudResearch team to select our project as a grant recipient. Hope we can use this grant to advance this project and make a good contribution. So our project is about collecting data, how to detect inattentive participants when doing online research. If you collect data online, you probably know that online studies often deal with participants who are not as diligent as we would like them to be. We often have to discard answers from multiple respondents who have given flippant answers or answers that are many standard deviations from the mean. Many respondents don't give their full attention to the survey, sometimes because the survey is too long, sometimes because they are not interested in the topic of the study. And in some cases, in cases of the mechanical Turk workers, this is their full-time job. So they might want to, go through the survey as fast as they can, wrap it up to get the payment. To deal with this problem, researchers often use attention check questions in their surveys. That some of them look like this. Like, for example, some of them that I have used in my research are using CAPTCHAs and asking participants to put in that word, or I've asked them to give a specific answer to a question, or one very popular form of attention check are the instructional manipulation checks that were suggested by Oppenheimer and his colleagues in 2009. This is a very popular and very well cited type of attention check. If you're not familiar with it, the IMC measures whether or not participants are reading the instructions. It has a question embedded within the experimental material that has the same length and the same type format, the same response format as the other questions. However, somewhere in the text, you tell the participants to ignore the question and give a specific answer to that question. For example, the question that I have on the right. This is probably the most popular attention check right now, and in many ways, it does detect a portion of the participants who are not paying attention. It's also one of my favorites. I do use that in my research almost in all my studies. There's another type of attention check that I also use in addition to IMC in my surveys. I usually put a text box in the beginning of the surveys that I run, and I ask participants to write a few sentences about a specific activity that it could be any activity. And I ask them to write it in correct English grammar. And of course, this is only when I am collecting data from US participants. Then I go through all of those responses, I read them, and then I flag those that did not give an answer that was grammatically correct or that was not related to the task at hand. This attention check, based on my experience, and this could be only my experience, works really well along with the IMC. There is a high correlation in many of the surveys that I have ran, and I have ran more than 60 surveys in the past 6 months. So there is a high correlation between the participants that this attention check, the non-attentive participants that this attention check detects, and the IMC. And sometimes it does even catch more flippant answers than the IMC, the instructional manipulation check does. While I love the IMC approach, one problem I have with that is that participants learn how to answer those questions, and based on my experience, it has lost some of its effectiveness. It is still effective. It still does detect a portion of flippant responses, but I feel like it has lost its touch. And the other problem is that MTurkers always share it on their forums, and some of them use that to give the answer. So that's why I ask this additional attention check. The only problem with this is that it takes a long time to go over those sentences and read them. And, sometimes I collect data from hundreds of people, and I have to read all of those sentences to be able to detect who's paying attention or not. So this problem got me thinking about coming up with a new type of attention check that is text-based, but it can be checked automatically to detect flippant responses. And that is the goal of our project. Oops, sorry, I forgot to go to the next slide. This is the attention check that I was talking about. So the goal of this project is to design an attention check that is text-based. So essentially, you will ask participants to write a few sentences about a specific topic. It could be the same topic as your research, or it could be a general topic. And then you will run it through an application. And based on that, you will detect who is paying attention and who is not. This is a text analysis-based type of attention check. If you're not familiar with text analysis or sentiment analysis, it's a technique that uses natural language processing techniques to detect human emotions from text data. There is a lot of research in that area that shows that we can actually understand how human beings feel and what they think by analyzing the text that has been written by them. For example, their social media posts. So to do that, we are going to use an automated text analysis tool called Luke, which searches the text for specific word categories, such as words referring to different emotions, risk, tone, etc., and returns a number from 1 to 100 for each response, indicating the percentage of text that contains words in that category. And the final goal is to design an attention check like that researchers can add to their online surveys and then run it through Luke and figure out who should be excluded. And for that, the goal of our research is to realize which sentiments and at what thresholds show that this participant was not paying attention. That is the major research question in our project. Thank you so much.
Feldman. I'm here to present to you our team and project, which involves large-scale replications and extensions of classic findings in social psychology and judgment and decision-making. Thank you for the opportunity. Our team is founded on the principles of open science. Trustworthiness, reproducibility, replicability, inclusion, equity are at the core of the team, where we emphasize collaboration and community. This started about 4 or 5 years ago as I was wrapping up my postdoctorate, and realizing that in order to solve some of the challenges ongoing in psychological science and science overall, we need to have a community effort and a large-scale collaboration in order to tackle some of these challenges. For me personally, it seemed very important to implement best practices of open science, emphasizing full transparency, sharing all the materials, data, code, sharing everything about the process and all the research decisions, but also doing a lot of what is not very common in science right now, which is doing a lot of replications, moving towards implementing register reports, or at least doing pre-registrations and all of that. And then, of course, sharing everything that we do when we have completed the project as preprints. Our team right now is about 75 early career researchers from around the world that have joined us to take what I do in my courses with students, undergraduate students at University of Hong Kong, to take those into journal submissions and dissemination so that others can benefit and build on that. What we aim to do is focusing on judgment and decision making. I decided that for me, at least for my limited knowledge of all the domains of social psychology, judgment and decision making seems to be the highest potential of having replicable findings that we can build on. And I also hope to do my own research on this domain. We aim to revisit this list in order to try and systematically map out all of the findings, revisiting some of the classics in the field, so reproducing some of the lost materials from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, rerun those with high power, pre-registered replications, moving towards register reports, try to have a more precise, accurate, estimated effect size for the phenomenon, after so many years and going beyond the student samples and perhaps the specific context that it was at first investigated in, and then trying to improve on some of the designs, like adding control neutral conditions, adding extensions in order to try and gain some new insights, and then finding potential links and integrations between different cognitive biases that have been studied separately. So far, we've completed around 80 pre-registered replications and extensions with data collection, with completed manuscripts, write-ups of the results. And I have about 40 of registered report stage 1, which is basically a written up pre-registration plan that is supposed to be submitted to peer review in a journal. And over there, we don't have data, it's before data collection, but we do simulate data sets of random noise, and then we write the data analysis plan based on that. We have a relatively high success rate compared to some of the other findings in social psychology, indicating something between 30 and 50%. So this is an indication both for judgment and decision making, at least my non-random sample of that literature, to be fairly replicable and consistent findings. The effect sizes seem to be comparable. But also in the ones that we did not find support, or the support was mixed or inconclusive, we were able to identify some ways of improving and building on this literature in order to try and gain additional insights. What we're focused on right now is moving from the pre-registered applications and extensions with completed data collection to doing everything as register reports. And as part of that, we're invested in a peer community in registered report. But we have quite a few pending that will be using the additional funding in order to support those. So very much appreciated. If you want to hear the student perspective, we don't have a lot of time, so you can go and have a look at the YouTube videos of them presenting their work and leading to an accepted manuscript. And then early career researchers, we have a column on psychology today, so you can go and read about their reflections. So Jian, Max, Hero, also a talk on YouTube on what it means to be an early career researcher, and join us. If you're interested in joining us, we're very eager to welcome you and have us join the team. Many opportunities for you to be part of this. And if you want to reach out personally and have a specific question, then please email me. I'm very happy to hear from you and see how I can support you in your open science activities. Thank you.
Okay, so hi all. First of all, thank you very much for this excellent conference and for the honor of being the recipient of the funds. It is really appreciated. And this project is about on the role of attention in online and the physical lab experiments. My name is Yefim Roth. So running experiments online have numerous advantages, as you know. It's fast, it's cheap, it's very large subject pools, and the diversity of the subject pools. However, there are concerns about the data quality, as we heard today, and as we know. And one very popular solution to this problem is using attention checks. And what I'm going to do in this project is I'm going to use one very simple attention check, which I will present you on the next screen, to compare the data quality of those who pass the attention check and not pass into samples, as I will show in a second. So here is the attention check. It's very simple, as you can see. You only have to choose one of the alternatives, and you see the payoffs of the alternatives on the screen. And the alternatives that is the most beneficial for you is, in this case, is E, and only those who select it are considered as those who passed the attention check, and all the rest are those who failed it. And what I'm interested in is two questions. Are the attentive and inattentive participants differ from lab attentive and inattentive participants in a repetitive task, as I will show you in a second? And are the attentive and inattentive participants differ in their choices? So maybe the inattention is rational inattention, because as I will show you in a second, I'm dealing with a repetitive task. As many life situations, maybe you don't have to actually be attentive. When you buy a new appliance, you don't read all the instructions carefully. You just on the go understand how to use it. So maybe some participants use the same strategy in the experiments. They don't attentively read all the instructions because they assume they will learn the essence of the task from the task itself. So here's how our clicking paradigm generally looks. You have some buttons on the screen and you have to click on them, and it's incentive compatible. So the more points you earn, the higher your final bonus, and you click on one of them. Let's assume on this one, and then you see that you earned 6 points. The only thing that you can do is click next and move to the next trial. In the next trial, you again have to choose what you do. Let's assume you click on the check button. Check button provides the highest payoff of all the alternatives, but for a certain cost. So it's maximizing your expected value, but it's never the best alternative. And again, you have to click next, you move to the next trial, and so on for many, many trials, for 100 trials. And as I said, the questions that I'm going to explore in this funded research, two questions basically. Are the attentive and inattentive participants the internet participants differ from the lab participants in their checking rates? And are there differences between the attentive and inattentive participants in their checking rates in general? Checking in this case is the maximization rate. So stay tuned for the project results. And my name is, as I said, Yefim Roth, and you are more than welcome to contact me with any questions or ideas. And again, thank you for the organizing of this conference, and thank you for funding this project.
Aslı Ceren Çınar, a PhD candidate from London School of Economics, and today I'm going to present my project. First, I would like to thank CloudResearch and creating this opportunity for researchers to to move forward in their areas. Today I'm presenting my project, Inventing the Perfect Candidate, a digital conjoint experiment. So you must have all seen these kind of commentaries on the media, news media, or television, or social media, criticizing or maybe evaluating a candidate's vocal characteristics, facial features, and how they can be a signal, a cue or heuristic in a sense to evaluate a candidate. Talks about how Obama's deep voice and his long jawline can be a signal for his authority, for his leadership skills, but this is not only for Obama. We have seen this type of commentaries. There was Margaret Thatcher about her voice. There was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez about how her face looks like, her makeup choices. And Keir Starmer, another example from the UK, about how he uses his voice. These are all examples of how not only media, but voters can use these facial and vocal characteristics in addition to demographic characteristics like race and gender to somehow evaluate a candidate, to assess a candidate, and use these characteristics as a cue for their decision-making process. Voice pitch, specific to one as one of the vocal characteristics, can signal trustworthiness and competence. It is also physiologically different for women and men, so it's another implicit signal for how we evaluate gender of these politicians or facial attractiveness. This can be used to assess some of the candidates' personality characteristics. But in addition to that, racial and race, ethnicity, and gender can also be very effective and interactive of how people perceive a candidate as attractive. All these cannot be isolated from each other when voters evaluate the candidates. So there is a strong interaction and implicit understanding of how we see political candidates and how we evaluate their leadership skills. That's why, in order to assess which specific attributes or characteristics voters use to inform their decision-making process, I'm planning to use a conjoint survey experiment. In classic traditional political science research, generally 2 list forms of candidate profiles are presented to subjects or voters, and the voters choose which candidate profile they would like to vote for. Very recently, digital conjoint designs in political science research has been developed and improved. Visual conjoint design, where they present 2 photos, or instead of a written form, written list form. And very recent research also tries audio conjoint design, in which they presented 2 audio recordings and asked voters to choose which candidate they would like to vote for. However, what I would like to do is to bring all these together and try to reflect our daily life interaction with political candidates, and try to reflect the political candidates' self-presentations as realistic as possible. In order to do that, you see all these photos. These are all computer generated candidates, and what I would like to is to rely on artificial intelligence to create these hypothetical political candidates, not only their faces, but also generate voices for these candidates. And in order to reflect as a real voter-candidate interactions, instead of presenting these two candidate profiles in a list form, I would like to present this in more interactive way as possible. To do so, we're not only going to look at facial features and vocal features, this design allows us how voters can implicitly reflect their racial and gender-based stereotypes when they're evaluating these candidates. What we're going to look at is how these physiological, and demographic characteristics can affect a candidate's chances of being elected, candidates' ratings in terms of how voters feel about this candidate, and how voters feel their closeness on an issue to this candidate. As I said, this is not always based on the candidate's issue stance. What we're going to look at how these candidates look like and sound like affect voters' evaluations of them. Thanks so much for listening to me, and thank you for CloudResearch to inviting me for this conference.